So first and foremost, a big congratulations on this film. I've watched a lot of the work that you've done, whether it was called The Midwife, The Crown, and this is just a delightful film that is both a crowd pleaser, but also like a feel good movie. Like a feel good movie, but has something to say. So thank you for that.
Fantastic. I'm glad you said that. It's definitely a hard task to make something that's fun and entertaining and carries you along on a wave, but also that's got a good, a serious message at its heart that you want people to think about. So thanks for that lovely intro.
No problem. And then I was just wondering, kind of going off that, how do you balance tone as a filmmaker?
Well, it depends. It all comes from the story. So I think it's very hard to make a very serious film about a group of feminists throwing flower bombs at Bob Hope, for instance. I think that in itself was an act of huge anarchy and fun and irreverence. And so for me, then the tone of the film comes from the very act that you're portraying. But inside that story are serious things to discuss, like the apartheid that Pearl suffers, one of the characters, that Jennifer's struggle to be taken seriously as a black contestant. And so those things are woven into the fabric of the film, or Sally's struggles to get her mum to understand her point of view. So it's really, really full of energy and life, which represents also the youth of the characters in the film, the young contestants and the women's liberation, young women, very, very full of vibrancy and vitality.
Yeah, I thought you just did such a terrific job finding, like I said, as I opened, like the balance of making this have a point, but not making it where, when you watch a movie and it has a serious message and you just feel so drained after you walk away from it. This one, like, I got the message. It's an important message, but I still felt good when I walked away from it. So I always think that's a big compliment.
Well, I think that's very kind of you to say, and thank you very much. I think at the end of the film, we really wanted people to walk out of the cinema feeling inspired above everything else, that these young women actually got up and did something, whether it was actually entering that competition and taking part in this world, or whether it was organizing that irreverent, blasted kind of riot and putting women's liberation on the map. Both are equally important in a way, and you just want people to feel inspired when they walk out.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, so when did you first discover this story? Did you first discover it when it was happening in the 70s, or was it something that you discovered much later?
Oh, much later. In fact, I didn't discover the story. The producer, Suzanne Mackey, was listening to a radio program on Radio 4 in the BBC, and it was this amazing program called The Reunion, which brought back Jennifer Hoston and three of the women's liberation women, Sally Alexander, Jo Robinson, and another woman who'd actually stormed the stage. And she had that program. She was just in her kitchen doing a bit of cooking, and she had to stop and listen to this amazing program. And she thought, that would make an amazing movie. Cut to 10 years later. It took 10 years from her listening to that radio program to it hitting the screens. And she linked up with writer Rebecca Frayne 10 years ago, and they started developing the script. And I'm a junior member of this team because I became involved about 3 years ago to come and direct it. So, and our other co-writer, Gabby Chappie, joined about the same time as me.
Great. That was a wonderful story too, by the way. I always love to hear like those 10 years in the making stories in Hollywood, because it like seems to happen way too often.
Well, making movies is hard, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So, this cast, I mean, you really put together an incredible cast. I mean, you got Gugu, you got Jesse Buckley, you got Leslie Mansville, you got Greg Kinnear. Just a wonderful cast of both like familiar faces and then some like up and coming faces. How important was that to you to make sure that you had everyone in place for the particular role that they played?
It was really important, especially in an ensemble film. because in an ensemble film, there are quite a few characters that you're following, and you need each character to be as vivid and as strong as they can possibly be, and different from each other. So the flavour of Sally Alexander was beautifully captured by Keira Knightley, and also the essence of Jennifer is beautifully captured by Gugu and Bath-Raw, and and Jessie as well, portrayal of Joe Robinson. You create a kind of wonderful box of treats by how you cast those characters. And we were very lucky. We had Nina Gold, who's a fantastic casting director, who casts things like The Crown, Game of Thrones, big movies. And she's such a wise person to advise on how to put a cast together. So I took a great amount from her.
When you're directing a film, I'm curious because I know a lot of your work stems from television. You've done a lot of direction in television, Crown, Call the Midwife stuff that I mentioned earlier, and then you even have like a new HBO Max show that's coming up where you directed a few episodes. Is that what are the differences as a storyteller or as a filmmaker when you go from the small screen to the big screen? Is there anything notable?
I think for me, being a woman director and having had a career in television directing where I was the lead director of Call the Midwife. I was the first person to do Call the Midwife. So I set Call the Midwife up. So it was a very authored experience doing that. The Crown is the only thing I've done which is episodic television. Everything else I've been at the beginning of creating and making the world. I have not really done episodic television apart from The Crown, which I loved doing, but that's my only experience of it. Everything else has been authored pieces of work, starting off in documentaries and moving into drama. For me as a woman director, there were very, very few opportunities to make films because it's such a male world. And so I have found a world in television which was where I was able to be a director and do stuff which is incredibly authored, like my series Three Girls, which won 5 BAFTAs, was a piece of work which was it's not episodic television, it's a mini series in 3 parts. And the same with the HBO series. It's 2 trilogies. Mark Munden is directing the first one and I'm directing the second one. Totally different styles. I have Naomi Harris as my lead. He has Jude Law. And so I think that's why it's always been very difficult for women to break into directing movies. I would have loved to have made more movies, but nobody asked me. When I won my first BAFTA for directing television, I'm the only woman who's ever won a BAFTA for directing television in drama. I thought that the world would open to me and people would ask me, as they had done my male colleagues before, to come and make films with them, and that didn't happen. It's only now when I'm a bit older that is happening more. Since the Me Too movement, I think more people are interested in having the authorship of a woman. So, sorry, I didn't mean to go into a feminist rant.
No. I'm actually very, very sorry to hear that. But you tackle, I created a critics organization called the Hollywood Critics Association. And one of the things that we do, and one of the big things that we support is inclusion and diversity and voices. And I cannot tell you how many filmmakers I have talked to over the last couple of years who have said the same exact thing that you have said.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking to me. I know I'm the person who is vilified right now, straight white guy. But at the same time, I just cannot believe so many people in this industry who have proved themselves so many times have had this huge struggle. It just, it's mind blowing and upsetting beyond belief.
Well, to me, television has been my friend because the people who have been commissioned me, like, the head of the BBC and all of these people have been incredible at allowing people like me and other women directors to forge our craft and be artists in our own right. whereas the film world has been, yeah, much more closed off, but different for a younger generation. I think people who are 10 or 15 years younger than me, I really hope that they are getting there before I was able to, and I champion them and celebrate their fantastic achievement.
Yeah, and I think in all fairness, I think it's changing. I think the time is starting to change. I mean, it's long time coming, but I think it's finally here. And to kind of end this note, end this on a more upbeat note, and I don't know if there is a way of doing that. How relevant do you personally feel that this movie still is to today?
Well, one thing I love about the movie, it's set in 1970, and it's quite interesting to look back and see how awful it was then for women, and how little opportunity there was then, and also to celebrate those women, the women of the women's liberation, who did stuff, who did kind of fight for rights, so that people like me could go on and be a director. So to me, that's a very, very important thing to celebrate, and also the fact that the first black woman won, and the second prize went to another black woman. That's incredible too. That is really an amazing conjunction of events that needed to be explored. And now, 50 years later, you want to look and think, what else do we need to do? Where have we got to go now? We look back and see that, but we need to look to the future too, see what more has to be done.
And a lot of it's being, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, like you said, so eloquently, since Me Too movement happened, time's up. I think a lot more voices are being heard. You're seeing it finally the last couple of years, and especially this year. If you're looking at all the movies that are getting a lot of praise this year, most are being directed by women or people of color. And I think it's so important that everyone's voice is finally starting to get heard. It's not fully there yet, but it's starting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Well
So
said.
thank you very much. It was very lovely to speak with you. Again, I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that you had to go through this struggle of trying to get films made, but I'm happy at least that you had a very strong career in television.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoy the rest of your day. And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Same to you. Thank you.